how do a husband and wife boating adventure team manage to break and establish 4 world records in one weekend? It was a dangerous high-speed trek along the entire East Coast that took over a year to plan. And the challenge was simple. It was to have breakfast in New York City and dinner in Miami, all in the same day, by boat.
Literally, right now, crossing into North Miami. I'm gonna bring it out plain, because you know what? Government cut, that's a finish line for everybody else. This is a finish line for me and you.
Oh, that looks so cool.
This is a true story high seas adventure of success and failure, where everything is tested, from the boat and the motors and even our relationship. Stay tuned to see if we have what it takes to complete this dangerous challenge. Alright, before we go any further, I have to ask, have you guys seen the episode before this? This is the second episode of the How to Live series, Maine to Key West by Powerboat. So if you're new to this channel and you're interested in how did this all start, what was the preparation like, go ahead and go to episode 1 to catch up, because this episode starts the actual adventure at a far-off small-town boat launch in Maine. Even though this high-speed boating adventure down the entire East Coast was over a year in the making, before we knew it, we were at the boat ramp, ready to go, and to be honest with you, maybe a little nervous and a little scared.
And just like that, we're off to Miami, and leaving Maine to Miami, just like that. See if we can do it. We've got the spare fuel. First stop, New York City, baby.
But not before Sarah finds out she forgot her purse in the support truck. Yeah, keep it real.
Give it a check test.
Hi, Tim. Check.
Sure, I got your purse here.
Oh, God damn it.
We're going right by the dock. Okay. Honey, how we doing?
We're getting
Oh my
there.
God. You ready?
Sweaty Betty right now.
All right, we're gonna do this. It's just the logistics to undertake this are just immense. We've got 212 plus 288 gallons on board right now. We're not starting here at the boat launch. We're gonna start at a national known mark, which is the Portland Head Lighthouse. Sorry guys, I'm thinking of a lot of different stuff. Well, say goodbye to home, honey, for a bit.
One of the coolest things about editing is looking back and seeing things you didn't see in real life. Like when your wife is starving and tries to sneak food, because she knows I'm on keto and doesn't want to eat in front of me. Yep, she's really like that.
Level up.
Okay, back brace engaged. 2,000 miles of high-speed boating. Better be safer than sorry. Wear the back brace.
I remember our first poker run, and I remember being so nervous. And now that seems like going to a backyard barbecue.
Yeah.
This is no big deal whatsoever.
It totally does. The nav in, when we get to Portland, we'll start the trips. We gotta start the clock. I got a drone. There's like a bunch of stuff we need to do before we even start. Are we really doing this?
We are.
We're in Maine, and our goal is to be in Key West by boat in 2 days.
So in short, what started as a pretty epic weekend adventure down the entire East Coast by boat ended up turning into something a lot more serious after our research. Knowing our boat very well and actually having about 25,000 miles on these type of boats, which is about around the world, we knew we had a chance to not only establish some new world records, but we could actually break some old ones too.
12:05 p.m. and mission complete as the boat throttles down in front of Lady Liberty. The team celebrates a new world record. Cape Hatteras, North Carolina to New York City in 6 hours, 10 minutes, and 8 seconds.
And the best part about this, it was just us. There was no sponsorships, no big team, no big fanfare. We were just going to try to do it in a weekend. Sounds simple enough. So in order for us to get organized for this almost 1,800-mile trip, we were going to have to break it down into sections. And the first section was simple. Head 18 miles north to the Portland Head Lighthouse. This famous and historic landmark for Maine would allow us to establish a starting point for a new world record. It's important to note that after countless hours of research, we have found no specific time information on this point-to-point track. Having one of the world's fastest, most fuel-efficient boats at that speed, we were confident that we could actually establish a new world record. Maybe we'll call it the Howe2Live Northeast Challenge. And we can announce it like the Hatteras to New York City fountain guy. The Howe2Live Northeast Challenge. Maybe not. But not so fast. We still have about 300 miles of crazy New England seas to get through and do it at, let's say, 80 or 90 miles an hour. Okay then. Alright, I think it's time to get honest with you guys. Remember a little while back I said Sarah and I might have been a little scared? Well, we were. Well, we put a fun-loving twist on this video for this epic adventure. At the end of the day, it was pretty dangerous.
Doesn't look healthy on the back.
To reduce the amount of fuel stops needed, we had to have fuel on deck, and a lot of it. There was probably no perfect way to skin that cat, but the above-deck siphoning system that we had come up with actually worked pretty well. And in our testing it seemed pretty safe, but you never know when a loose fuel hose might pop up. And that could spell disaster if we don't catch it in time. And this is why I asked Sarah to smell the bilge.
Okay, honey, why don't you go and let's check for any loose lines, any fuel in the bilge. Make sure everything looks tight. The interior tank valves are turned off. The exterior tank valves are turned on.
Copy.
How's it smell in there?
I mean, it's dry.
Okay.
It's a little smelly.
Dry, but a little smelly. Not sure how to take that. Is she talking about my socks that were left on the living room floor last night? Or the bilge?
No, the gas lines are fine. Everything's fine for that.
Okay. Here we go.
Dear Lord, please keep us safe.
And just like that, our adventure is officially on plane. Northbound 18 miles to Portland Head Lighthouse to start the official clock. It's also important to note that the amount of work that it takes to pull off one of these videos is astronomical. From the planning to the logistics to the production to the filming to flying drones to running a long lens to running all the GoPros to running all the 360s to running our iPhones to running the Samsung. And oh yeah, you might want some still shots thrown in there for the thumbnail of this epic adventure. Then you take all that, you bring it back to the studio and you edit it and you finalize it for multiple platform release. And I say all this not to complain, but just to let everybody know how much work it really is to produce one of these videos. And also to show you that doing this also takes away from the adventure. And that was one of my frustrations with this whole weekend. We weren't just always racing against the clock and actually trying to break a world record, we're also always trying to collect content and videotape everything. And at the end of the day, it just takes away from the purity of doing an adventure. I think someday soon, Sarah and I are just going to do one of these and we're going to put the cameras down. As you fans of the channel know, we're going to keep it real, no matter what. And with that little bit of honesty out of the way, it's time to roll with the goodness of this adventure. Because collecting content or not, these 3 days are some of the best days my wife and I will ever have.
First thing I'm going to do is grab the drone. Try to get a drone shot.
gonna fall eventually. There's no defying gravity. But you make me feel indestructible. Indestructible. Yeah, you make me feel it's not impossible.
And it's capturing footage like that that makes you realize it's worth it.
Thinking I was bulletproof.
With all the cameras running and the drone footage captured, it was time to get to New York City, the first stage of this whole adventure. And as you can tell, it's getting pretty late in the day to start a 300-mile adventure on the ocean. But Mother Nature, she waits for nobody, and we had to move.
Here, it's crazy as far as filming and logistics. We're done. We got the drone filming. There's a piece of wood log over there. We got to be careful. We stay out of this river. Don't want to lose a prop before we even start. So we're going to start right now. Boom. You see the lighthouse behind us. I'm going to start relive. This is the official track. Boom. We are started.
1525.
1525, 325. And we are headed. We have a track, a route, inbound route. We've got some 2-foot rollers here coming out. We're going to slowly get on top. We're in no rush right now because we're fully fueled. We're very heavy.
I've said this before and I'll say it a million more times because it's true. But the camera doesn't capture sea state very well. Actually, it's not even close.
All right, here we go.
And it's even worse when the waves aren't sharp. Here it looks like we're in bathwater, but we're actually in about 1 to 2 foot rollers spread by about 11 seconds. And those conditions make you get air at about, let me see, carry the one, at about every 3 seconds at 100 miles an hour.
We're only doing 55 right now. We gotta get out of the mouth here. Got a big weed mat.
Everywhere.
Big weed mat. Don't want to suck up that weed. Start the trip like that. All right, you got where we got for pressures?
Pressures are good. Temp is great.
Let's get up to speed here. Got a good wind blowing right down the tunnel. But we really do have to get rid of these rollers.
Honestly, we'd love to have 1 to 2 foot chop like we do down in Florida. But this is the North Atlantic. It's a much different sea. And this adds another layer of complexity right to the starting point of this trip.
And we are doing about 70, 75, about 10 miles offshore. Can't get going any faster than 75 without getting too airy. Got some rollers out here. Difference between Maine and the Keys, where everything's really shallow. You get big rollers up here. You gotta be careful because they'll come out of nowhere and you'll be launched.
But as we turn south out of the Bay of Portland, the swells die down, and we're able to actually get some pretty good speed, if you can tell from the smile on my wife's face. If there was ever a flight of the Valkyries for this trip, this was the time. For you young ones, after you watch this, you might want to look up the movie Apocalypse Now. Yep, you're welcome. Well, after a pretty decent start and some pretty good speeds, we had to slow down. Well offshore and into the Gulf of Maine going to the Gulf of Massachusetts, we found some uncomfortable 3-footers because they're hitting us diagonally, and that's not great for boats. And please remember what I said earlier, the camera does not do the sea state justice. It's not even close.
Well, we're about 100 miles in and the seas haven't been nice. They haven't been super bad, but as you can tell, I mean, they're not great. We can't pick up any speed. We're only doing about 70 to 80. And, you know, we're in just a rough chop 2s to 3s. 100 miles of that kind of wears on you a little bit. And we have about 19 times that. We have to do 1,900 miles. So hopefully it smooths out up here a little bit.
Our first How to Live fan of the day cheers us on by bird. That's pretty cool.
I mean, we've got 3s right now, and we're just trying to keep it to 60. It's just blowing 25 knots. Good job, Wendy. Really, you hit this prediction out of the park. Oh.
Windy, the marine forecast app, getting it wrong? Nah, you don't say.
Notice how nobody's voting? Nice.
And after about 2 hours of decent chop through the Gulf of Maine and the Gulf of Boston, it was time for the Cape Cod Canal. It was going to be a lot slower, but the seas were guaranteed to be smoother and possibly more scenic, so that's good for the wifey.
We rolled through the Maine Gulf, Massachusetts Gulf, and now we're rolling into the Cape Cod Channel. We had a choice to go around the whole Cape, but with the seas the way they are, no way.
Actually, the Cape Cod Canal was a much needed reprieve. We needed a break and we needed to figure out our fuel mileage. So Sarah got the notepad out and we did some numbers. We were getting just under what we expected, which was 1.55 miles a gallon. This was a decent number considering our weight, but it still meant we had to make some adjustments to the plan from New York to Miami. And sometimes, no matter how determined, you're just forced to stop and smell the roses. In this case, quite literally. Or because there's a speed limit in the Cape Cod Canal, and it might be heavily enforced. Am I going too fast? Did you think I was kidding? Yeah. Oops. Look at Sarah, she's so embarrassed. She's not the type to pull her badge, but she wants out of there so bad. Hubby is such an embarrassment. I love it. Full disclosure, we actually didn't get pulled over. These guys are just making sure that nobody goes under the super low drawbridge while it's down. There's a lot of current here and it can be very dangerous. But yes, Sarah was actually embarrassed there because of course I had to go say hi to him and she'd just prefer we sit and wait for the drawbridge like everybody else. And sure enough, we did get stuck for about a half an hour. Now these guys were fans of the channel and we'd like to thank them for their escort and also their service. Stay safe out there, you guys. We'll see you soon. Alright, once we got through the Cape Cod Canal, it was time for a straight shot right down Long Island Sound. Unfortunately, the wind direction and strength did not change, keeping our speeds right around 70 miles an hour, which is pretty slow.
Back into 2s and 3s, some topping over that. We hit a pretty good one. Can't get more than 70 right now. It's boating. We're way behind schedule. Alright, Long Island Sound, right down the gut. Let's go.
Now at about 170 miles, which was just on the east side of Buzzards Bay, it was time for our first fuel tank swap. This meant we were going to have to slow down a little bit and Sarah was going to have to turn some valves from the top deck fuel tanks to the inside fuel tanks.
Want me to open the back before I shut these off?
Okay, yes, open the back. So go back there, open the back real quick, and turn those on.
In the preparation for this whole trip, this was the operation that concerned me the most. But at the end of the day, it worked flawlessly every time.
What I'm do now is just basically open the auxiliary fuel tank, actually the main fuel tanks. We've used up these in our auxiliary, so now we're on a full tank of regular.
And just like that, Mother Nature brings on Sarah's scariest moment of the trip.
We just got fogged in big time, and we were doing great. We're just starting to get the lee, and we're just starting to pick up speed. We just got fogged in. Trying to break the world record in fucking pea soup ain't gonna work.
Did you just hear beeping? Maybe it's the motor whining. Do you hear that?
Now, if you look at the Garmin GPS, you'll notice Sarah and I are starting to carve to shore. That's because we're in a major shipping channel. We were forced to slow down to about 20 to 30 miles an hour. And yeah, we saw several ships come out of the fog, like ghost ships. One time we came up along the side of a large fishing vessel. And we turned just in time. We couldn't get that on camera, but we wish we had. It's important to note that large shipping container cargo ships actually move pretty fast, and it's your job to get out of their way. It's highly likely that they wouldn't even know if they ran you over. Now, after about 45 minutes of running slowly close to shore, the fog finally burned off. We were able to rip down Long Island Sound. And that's when my scariest moment of the trip happened. The beautiful image of this lighthouse will be eternally burned into my memory, in a scary way. As Sarah and I were finally feeling comfortable just enjoying the sunset getting to New York City, we passed the famous Race Rock Lighthouse, and everything seemed normal and fine and fun. And just off in the distance, right in front of the boat, I saw a weird looking wave. It shimmied a little different, it moved a little different. Something wasn't right and my hackle stood up instantly. At 100 miles an hour, it was coming up fast, really fast. Something still doesn't look right. Gotta go hard to port, immediately hard to port. Turn hard enough to avoid whatever this is and soft enough to not flip the boat. And with an instant, we passed a 30-foot by 2-foot wide telephone pole, just barely floating at the top of the water. We missed it by about 5 feet. This telephone pole had been washed down Thames River all the way from Vermont due to heavy flooding the week before.
Saybrook, you're seeing it there. The river is full of logs and other debris.
We were both stunned and looked at each other immediately. Sarah asked me, what would have happened if we had hit that? I think it might have been the first time in my life I told her. I don't know. But there's a high probability the boat would have sunk and we would have been in the water, alone, either conscious or dead. And this was the near miss we both needed, at the beginning of the trip, to remind us of just how serious what we're doing really is. These outboard speedboats are so comfortable and so fast at high speeds they can really lull you into a sense of security, or false security at that speed. You always have to be on your toes in these boats. And from here on out, Sarah and I were always looking for that little ripple, that little wave that didn't quite look right.
There she is, New York City.
Get ready for the revolution. It's coming to you now. It's coming to you now. Rising up, now the tide's turning. Feel the heat, yeah, the fire's burning. No hesitation, our generation leads us onward. Start the clock, now the game.
And after about 5 hours on the water to start this crazy adventure, we were rolling into New York City from the north, from Long Island Sound. The sun was setting, and it was perfect timing.
Ready for the revolution. It's coming to you now.
We both felt like we'd been through a pretty big battle, and that was pretty humbling knowing we had so much ahead of us. We needed some sleep. We were exhausted. And we needed to check the boat for any safety issues before the big run. For now, we were happy. We had made it from Portland, Maine to New York City without issue and about to establish a new world record. Little did we know then, it was actually the easiest part of the whole trip.
It's your favorite song, yeah. Our motivation, our inspiration.
There are certain moments of any adventure that stand out in your memory and give you chills when you think back on them. And rolling into New York City at 100 miles an hour with your wife at your arm and the sun setting was one of those moments. With a memory like this, we had already won.
Are you ready for the revolution? It's coming to you now. It's coming to you now. You're witnessing an evolution.
As the sun set, it became darker. The river seemed to come to life even more with the lights of the city, and it was truly mesmerizing. As we ripped under the world's famous Hell's Gate, I was waiting to turn the corner at East Park and see her for the first time. At 49 years old, I'd actually never seen the Statue of Liberty with my own eyes. And I guess that's what makes it so magical for us. We didn't wait in any lines or take a ferry. We just did it on our own accord, our own way. And that to us is how to live.
Get ready for the revolution.
Oh, there she is. I see her.
I see her.
Zooming on her.
It's coming it now. You're witnessing an evolution. And they'll never bring us down. No, they'll never bring us down. Get ready for
And we're going to officially stop our time. Finish. 5 hours and 35 minutes from Portland, Maine. Average speed 63 miles an hour. Well, that was because we got stuck in fog and we had 3-footers.
And at a train bridge.
All right, let's take a photo.
and they'll never bring us down. No, they'll never bring us down.
There's a restricted buoy right there.
Yeah, I know, and you keep floating into it.
And after a quick selfie with Miss Liberty, we just idled back to Liberty Landing in almost complete silence, both mesmerized and exhausted. The adventure had just started, and yet we both felt like we'd already boated halfway around the world. Is this adventure from Portland, Maine to Key West and New York City to Miami in one weekend too much for us? Did we dream too big? There was only one way to find out. But unfortunately, we've run out of time for this episode. And you fans of the channel know it's about 20 or 30 minutes is all you got. It's not my fault you guys have a massive ADHD problem. So stay informed, hit subscribe, and be ready for episode 3, where we finish this epic series from New York City to Miami and Key West. Do we actually pull it off, or do we die?
Invincible, you can't knock us. Untouchable, you can't stop us. We chase the stars, gonna reach out till they're in our grasp. Impossible, but it's nothing. Unstoppable, we ain't bluffing. We come this far and there ain't no way we're backing down. Whoa, whoa, whoa. We are untouchable. Whoa, whoa, whoa. We never fade, we never fall. We'll be the last one standing. No chance that we'll be crash landing. And we're on fire as they all go down in flames.
The best YouTube channel out there. The best. Great job. Great job. Howe2Live. Congratulations.
We'll move these mountains one by one.